Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Heather. I'm just so amazed at how much information people are really able to share in a relatively short time. And you definitely did that too. So we do have a little bit of time, a little bit more time for discussion in this after your session than we did before on the previous session. So first, I'd like to invite the reactors to turn on their webcams, and I'll do a little bit more full introduction than I did the last time. Reactors that we have today are Paul M.A. Baker, PhD, is Senior Director, Research and Strategic Innovation at Georgia Tech Center for Advanced Communications Policy and Interim Chief Operations Officer, Center for the Development and Application of IoT Technologies. He's also a principal research scientist within the School of Public Policy and operations manager of the NIDLR-funded Rehabilitation Engineering Research Center for Wireless Inclusive Technologies, or Wireless RERC. He is currently researching the role of innovation networks in workforce development, policy approaches for advancing technology and universal accessibility goals for persons with disabilities, and the operation of communities of practice and online communities and public sector use of information and communication technologies. Marta Garcia is bilingual information media specialist for NARIC, which is a NIDLR contractor. Marta has experience in the development of digital content in English and Spanish, social media analytics, and account management. As NARIC's bilingual information and media specialist, Marta oversees NARIC's Spanish language social media accounts and creates content that is seen in the Spanish-speaking disability community around the globe. Her strong background in recreational therapy for the geriatric and pediatric communities has helped create her engaging and exciting content and instilled a deep love for evidence-based and innovative interventions. One of her specialties is being able to translate research and evidence-based materials into Spanish social media bites. Hilda Smith is a queer, trans, and disabled person who is a vanguard of new and radical social justice work focusing on disability, addiction, and knowledge mobilization. They recently finished their doctorate in critical disability studies at York University. This passion led them to explore how knowledge moves between grassroots movements, academics, and policymakers. Hilda's research has led them to work with school boards, research institutions, knowledge mobilization units, social planning councils, and community organizations. Hilda has become an expert in knowledge mobilization, clear language, event promotion, and relationship building. An essential part of Hilda's work has been exploring how anti-oppression can work alongside inclusion and accessibility within knowledge mobilization. So we've got a very varied group of reactors, as you can see, and we have a lot of interesting topics to see if we can cover. Marta, let's start with you. Which of the strategies that were mentioned for creating engaging messages were most important for you in your work at NARIC?
Believe it or not, all of them. But really all of them. But I would say probably making things more personable. So, for example, when I speak about when I'm sharing information from, let's say the wireless or RERC, I will say our friends at instead of our colleagues, because that's just it's more humanizing, I find. And I find that a lot of in the Spanish speaking community, they sort of go, oh, so they're friends. It's not, that it makes the science and the scientists more, not that they're not people, but more personable. So I think that's one of the biggest ones that I use as far as a strategy.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Paul, in your role, I'm sure you have to share information about your work to a wide range of audiences. And given that social media encompasses such a wide range of platforms, audiences, and use, can you tell us how you choose the appropriate platform for a given output? And how do you measure and assess the efficacy of the approach? Are there specific analytic tools that you employ?
To avoid repeating myself, during the last session, I talked about the analytic tools, and the same thing would hold true here. So I'll focus on the first part. a lot of what we do, a lot of what Wireless RERC, in fact, and the Center for Advanced Communication Policy and CDATE does, is serve as interface or translational, much like the center, translating technology to policymakers and policymakers' concerns to technologists, and it goes both directions. One of the things that we do is we tend to use social media. Again, as I said, that there was social media as data collection, social media as recruitment, social media as dissemination. But as Heather pointed out, the whole concept of networking was something I neglected to mention because it wasn't as pertinent to that particular presentation. One of the things that we do, for instance, is use social media to draw attention. Like you can, we do papers fairly frequently, and Heather can probably tell you that when you look at the bibliometrics of publications in scientific communities, the typical paper that's published gets 1 or 2 citations if you're lucky. And partly is there's so much material published that people lose it. One of the powers of social media is to take and amplify. We regularly, for instance, our friends at NARIC, both in Espanol and in Inglés también, we use, as part of what we're doing is we regularly, we probably disseminate across our different platforms and different properties, probably between 20 and 30 tweets a day, for instance. I do a lot of that across, I managed or are involved with 8 different Twitter accounts, all right? And you cross amplify them. So for instance, we put up, let's say that we've published a policy filing, right, to NTIA or FCC. Well, it's very well and good, but 5 people will see that. The other people who commented, the FCC, but there may be things that you want. So what we will do, for instance, is publish our paper on our website, then start running through with Twitter. We'll post it on LinkedIn, then tweet that it's on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn refers back to the website, and there is an amplification process that occurs. But one of the things that we do regularly is to follow and retweet colleagues or as Marta says, our friends. This, if you don't have, and one of the things, one of my piece of advice is for my colleagues is, it doesn't matter if you don't necessarily have new stuff to put up all the time, curate stuff. What you're doing is signaling not just that you're experts by what you publish, you're experts in a sense of that which you understand and are able to communicate. The curational role is a very powerful role. So in that, the summary is, different platforms are able to convey different amounts and different flavors. As Heather says, know your audience. When you're speaking to policymakers these days, scientists and certain political parties tend to make data-based arguments which cause eyes to glaze. You have to link telling a story to the data. The hybrid approach tends to be effective. The story catches their attention. The data, if you will, is what provides political ammunition. Again, primarily my audience is policymakers. So I've gone on way too far. I hope that at least addressed some of it.
No, I think that was great. And I really like the way you tied the storytelling to the data as well, and making it doubly useful that way. So let's talk to Hilda now. This presentation really seems right up your alley as a knowledge mobilization and clear language specialist. So in your work with research institutions and community organizations, how do you gauge the appropriate tone and content of messages for diverse audiences?
So one of my things when it comes to messaging is I really believe in targeted messaging. As Heather mentioned, trying to just create something for a general audience just really is very difficult and typically doesn't get picked up very well. So when the resources exist, I really like to kind of identify kind of the top 3 to 5 kind of audiences that you want to connect with. And then identify platforms or ways to connect with them best. Of course, always, if you can, having engagement and input by those people into what the products will look like. I will admit, especially when working with community organizations or with researchers, there's not usually a lot of funds to be able to do that kind of broad, really extensive piece. So one of the things I like to do is very similar to what Paul was just talking about, is creating kind of different pieces that interconnect and bring people in different ways. So if there's a published paper or a presentation, you want to promote that, I really like there being some kind of clear language summary, easy to read document. And then that can be what is shared on your social media and becomes kind of this in-between piece that is easier for people to access. And then if they want more information, can go to the larger journal article or to the presentation that you have. And just using these kind of stepping stone pieces that all integrate and work together can be really great.
Thank you. We've got a couple of other questions that have come in from the audience directed to Heather. Wondering, Heather, if you could comment on the more recent literature that shows support for the deficit model, in that a better understanding of the science and improved science literacy can change attitudes toward science.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that particular research about kind of supporting the deficit model, but I will say that, definitely having more support. I was just answering someone's questions too. I was typing it kind of along these lines that, I think there is a scope and a place for more education sort of about the scientific process, about why evidence matters and how science works, and why it works the way that it does, and, to kind of build trust in science. But I do think that a lot of that comes from the messenger themselves too. Like we live in a world where the messenger matters, and the message itself matters. So it goes back to sort of having that clear, concise message and making what you're saying understandable to people, right? I think that's what we want to do as good communicators, and that's the thing that we should be really focused on. If you want to, there was a question a little bit later down, so I'll kind of answer both of these at the same time because I sort of get at the same point. But someone said, how can we become more person, but still avoid kind of the personification of scientists? And so I think that by having that really solid message that's understandable to your audience and doing that work is probably the best thing that you can do. You don't have to be super personal in how you communicate if that's not your style. But it goes back to some of that research that I shared about jargon, where if you are giving someone something that's hard to understand, that has a lot of jargon, that actually causes people to have backlash against you. They feel like they're on the outside looking in, instead of like you're bringing them into this conversation with you, or into this research, or showing them why it matters to them. And so I think simply by doing that, by bringing them into it, making them feel like a part of it, because they can understand what you're saying, can go a long way to breaking down some of these barriers and building trust, without necessarily having, again, to be super personal or share personal stories or something, if that's, again, not your style. So hopefully that kind of helps answer the question.
Great, thank you very much. Another question that came in, and I think probably everyone would have a shot at answering this one. This came in from the registration form. My organization doubts the benefits of using social media. How am I going to get them on board? So would anyone like to take that question? Okay, Paul.
I'll start it off. I know that we just, I just became Chief Operating Officer of Center for Development and Internet of Things. And it was entirely old school, a newsletter that came out and no social media, very little engagement. And we brought up a Twitter feed that went from 0. I mean, right now it's only 150, but in a month, and to be followed, for instance, by the Brookings Institute and some very large people. It's not just how many followers, it's who's following you is also important. And one of the things that I was able, I mean, because I'm the COO, I get to decide whether this is a good idea or not. But we told our board one of the things that was happening was that we were being picked up and amplified, and the awareness was going up, and it was not costing, advertising money. It was, staff time. But the point is, I was trying to make is, what is the message and what are you trying to get out? And there are a variety of ways of doing it. And putting all of your eggs in one basket is not smart. In the real world, it's not smart with communication strategy, not smart with research methodology.
I can add something to that too. I would be curious to understand why they think social media isn't effective, or what's the hesitation? Are they worried about sort of the backlash? Are they worried that it just isn't a good use of time? I kind of, in my presentation, went through a lot of different reasons that we hear why this might not be a good fit, or why people don't want to dive into social media. So I think pinpointing maybe a little bit more about where the hesitation is coming from and why can help you kind of think about, providing examples or, data to kind of back up, or saying hey, maybe we can give this a try and see at a different level, at kind of one of these lower, engagement levels, and see how it goes from there. But I would also say, again, it's where people are, right? 72% of people use social media now. So by not using it, I think you are sort of missing out on a big audience potentially.
I agree. Backlash is something that you just mentioned, and that was also commented on in our chat box. It was looking at the concept of risk for people who possibly identify themselves as female or LGBTQ or minorities or people of color, because the example you gave was someone who identified as male. Who would like to comment on that concept of backlash and who might be more at risk for suffering from backlash? Hilda, would you like to start?
So we know that anytime there's backlash online, it can happen to anyone, but typically does happen to people who are viewed or fit within marginalized communities, just because they're marginalized already. So that is something that is good to think about. One thing that especially with my anti-oppression work, I recommend that anyone who has a plan for engaging with social media has some kind of training and support for people who are monitoring or working on the social media, so that they know who their coworkers are that they can go to talk about issues, who their supervisors are to pull in for support. But then it's also really important to think about what happens when backlash happens. What happens if it's directed at the organization? What happens if it's directed at a specific individual at the organization? So that if it happens, you're not surprised. You can automatically say, okay, this is what we're doing to help sort the situation and to support the people who are involved. And that is unfortunately just because of the way social media is set up. It is something we need to think about when we're talking about social media policies and projects when we work with them.
Thank you. Marta, would you have anything that you might like to add in this discussion?
Yes, and I agree with Hilda. having those policies in place is definitely very a good. It's very important. I thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't received any backlash at NARIC as far as on the Spanish language side or in the English language side, as far as I'm aware. But we also make sure to have those policies in place, that if it does happen, I know I can go to my boss, or, Mark Odom, who's the director of NARIC, I know where I can go to talk about that. And I know what I can do to respond. But like I said, thankfully we've been very lucky and we haven't had that. But we also try to support our followers. If, let's say I tweet about something in the NARIC in Espanol, and somebody comments and then there's a backlash to that comment, I know what procedures I need to take as, that are within NARIC that I can take to support that person, or organization that got the backlash.
Right. There's a comment on their chat box that there are so many levels of approval before posting things on social media that it's almost not worth the trouble. I can see where that could definitely be an issue in some organizations. So you're taking care of that risk, but it might be right where it becomes more problematic than the benefit that you're hoping to get. We're just about out of time, but we do have a couple of minutes left. Heather, I wanted to ask you if you had any further comments you'd like to make to close out the session.
I don't think so. Just, please check out the resources that we have on our website. There's a lot there that goes into a lot more detail. And I hope that you take some chances and maybe try doing social media or some kind of communication that you might not have done before. And because I think that's where we kind of learn and we grow and we're taking those risks. And it's super worth it. So I think I'll just leave with that thought.